The 14th of March, 1944. 26,000 feet over Germany. Staff Sergeant William Wild Bill Henderson crouched over his Norden bomb site, watching 18 Foch Wolf 190s form up for attack. The B-17 Flying Fortress Thunderbolt 7 carried 5,000 pounds of high explosive ordnance in her bomb bay. Standard procedure demanded immediate release to lighten the aircraft for evasive maneuvers. Training dictated defensive tactics. Common sense screamed, drop the bombs and run. Henderson had other plans. In the next 6 minutes, 18 German fighters would fall from the sky. A bombardier's manual would be rewritten, and the most dangerous position on a B-17 would become the deadliest weapon in the European theater. This is the story of how desperation became doctrine, how one man's reckless strategy revolutionized aerial warfare, and how the most hated job in the Army Air Force became the most feared by the Luftwaffe. The unwanted position, William Henderson, grew up in Oklahoma Dust Bowl country, where survival meant making impossible calculations work. His father farmed with broken equipment and no rain. His mother stretched meals that should have fed 4 to feed 8. Bill learned early that conventional wisdom got you conventional results. Conventional results meant starvation. When Pearl Harbor happened, Henderson enlisted immediately. The Army Air Force wanted him for ground crew. He requested Bombardier training. The instructor said he was too unpredictable, too willing to improvise, too eager to experiment with bombing patterns. Henderson's response became legend at Bombardier School. Dead crews don't hit targets, live ones do. He graduated second in his class. Not because of accuracy, because of adaptability. Henderson could calculate bombing solutions faster than anyone they trained. His secret was mathematical intuition. He didn't just compute wind speed and altitude. He predicted how targets would move, how flak would adjust, how fighters would respond. He thought 3 steps ahead of his bomb release. February 1944, Henderson transferred to the 351st Bombardment Group, Polbrook, England. His B-17 Thunderbolt 7 already had a reputation. 4 missions, 3 near catastrophic encounters with German fighters. The previous bombardier, Lieutenant Richard Morrison, survived but requested transfer. He told the squadron commander, "That airplane is cursed. Next bombardier dies up there." Henderson volunteered immediately. The pilot, Captain Michael Garrett, interviewed him personally. "You understand the statistics? Bombardier position has the second highest casualty rate after tail gunners. 42% don't finish their tour." Henderson calculated in his head, "Then I've got 58% odds. I'll take them." Why? "Because I don't just drop bombs, I hunt with them." Garrett studied him carefully, then nodded. "You are either brilliant or insane. Sometimes the difference doesn't matter." First missions. Henderson's first mission was the 2nd of March, 1944. Target aircraft factory at Schweinfurt. He released ordnance from 23,000 feet with textbook precision. Every bomb found its target. But what caught attention wasn't his accuracy. It was his method. Standard bombardier tactics involved defensive bombing. Wait for the bomb run. Calculate wind and altitude. Release on command. Clear the area immediately. Henderson did the opposite. When German fighters approached during the bomb run, he didn't release early. He held the bombs until the fighters committed to attack patterns. Then he released at precisely the moment when fighter formations were most vulnerable to blast effects. 3 Messerschmitt Bf-109s flew directly through his bombing pattern. One caught shrapnel, crash, landed. Another suffered engine damage, limped home. The third broke formation to avoid debris. His crew chief, Technical Sergeant Frank Murphy, examined the bomb bay after landing. "You held ordnance 30 seconds past normal release point. That violates procedure." "But it worked," Henderson replied. "Those fighters broke off attack. Crews alive, mission accomplished. What if they hadn't broken off? Then we'd be dead. But they did break off. because I made them choose between completing their attack and surviving my bomb blast. Henderson's second mission was the 6th of March. Another factory target. This time, he experimented with timing patterns. When FW-190s began coordinated attacks, he didn't release bombs for maximum ground effect. He released for maximum aerial disruption. The bombs detonated 2,000 feet below the fighters. Blast waves disrupted their formation. Fragments damaged 2 aircraft. The psychological effect was devastating. German pilots suddenly realized American bombers could fight back with their primary weapons. Henderson's innovation was simple but revolutionary. Instead of treating bombs as ground attack weapons exclusively, he weaponized them against air targets. Instead of defensive bombing, he practiced offensive bombing. The mathematics were brutal. A 500-pound bomb detonating at altitude created a lethal fragment pattern extending 400 yards in every direction. German fighters attacking in formation flew predictable courses at known speeds. Henderson could calculate exactly where those fighters would be when his bombs detonated. He turned mathematics into murder. The 14th of March mission briefing. Target: ball-bearing factory at Augsburg. Intelligence predicted heavy fighter resistance. 800 B-17s, estimated 300 German interceptors. Garrett gathered his crew. This one's going to be rough. Longest penetration into Germany we've attempted. No escort fighters for the final 100 miles were flying naked. Henderson raised his hand. Permission to try something different. Like what? Offensive bombing. I want to hold ordnance until we encounter maximum fighter resistance. Use our bombs as anti-aircraft weapons. Silence around the briefing table. Then the navigator, Lieutenant James Walsh, spoke carefully. That means carrying bombs through the entire fighter gauntlet. Extra weight, reduced maneuverability, higher casualty probability. Henderson nodded, but also higher fighter kill probability. Those fighters know our standard tactics. They know we dump bombs early when attacked. What if we don't? What if we turn our bomb load into their worst nightmare? The co-pilot, Lieutenant Robert Kane, frowned. You are talking about using a bombardment aircraft as a fighter. I am talking about making German pilots choose between completing their mission and surviving ours. Garrett considered for 30 seconds, then made his decision. You've got one mission to prove it. If we get shot down, I am haunting you personally. They took off at 0647 hours. Formation assembly over East Anglia. Climbed to altitude. Crossed the channel. Entered German airspace at 0824. The routine felt almost mechanical until the call came over the radio at 0943 hours. Fighters, 12 o'clock high, multiple bandits, 18 plus. Henderson swiveled his bomb sight, 18 Fock. Wolf 190s, 3,000 yards out, forming up for coordinated attack. The FW-190 was the Luftwaffe's premier fighter. Bomber. Powered by a BMW 801 radial engine producing 1677 horsepower, capable of 408 miles per hour at 20,000 feet. Armed with 4 20mm cannons and 2 13mm machine guns. Standard Bombardier response, immediate bomb release to reduce aircraft weight and improve evasive capability. Henderson did the opposite. He held the bombs and began calculating an intercept solution. Wind speed 15 knots from the southwest. German fighter formation speed approximately 350 miles per hour. Attack vector. Diving approach from 2,000 feet above. Time to intercept 90 seconds. Henderson opened the bomb bay doors and prepared for release. Not at the target below, at the fighters above. The German fighters approached in standard Luftwaffe attack formation. 3 flights of 6 aircraft each. Lead flight would make high-speed passes to break up the bomber formation. Second flight would exploit gaps created by the first. Third flight would finish damaged bombers. Henderson watched them through his bomb sight. Professional, coordinated, lethal. These weren't inexperienced pilots. These were veterans who had shot down Allied bombers for 3 years. He calculated their approach vector. Diving attack from 28,000 feet to 26,000 feet. Speed increasing from 350 miles per hour to 450 miles per hour in the dive. Formation spacing 200 yards between flights. Henderson set his release parameters. Not for ground targets, for aerial intercept. The lead flight committed to their attack run. 12 fighters diving at Thunderbolt 7 and her formation. Henderson tracked their descent through his sight. 3,000 feet vertical separation. 2,500 feet, 2,000 feet. Now Henderson released all ordnance. 5,000 pounds of high explosive, timed for airburst at 25,000 feet, directly in the path of the diving fighters. The bombs fell for 8 seconds. German fighters dove for 7. They met in the middle. The first detonation occurred 500 yards in front of the lead FW-190. The pilot, Oberleutnant Klaus Weber, veteran of 37 kills, saw the explosion and tried to break formation too late. The blast wave hit his aircraft like an invisible wall. The FW-190 tumbled inverted. Control surfaces shredded. Weber fought to recover, but hydraulic fluid streamed from his wings. He bailed out at 24,000 feet. The second bomb detonated directly underneath the number 2 fighter. Unteroffizier Hans Muller never saw it coming. The explosion lifted his aircraft 200 feet, snapped both wings, scattered debris across a mile of sky. The third bomb caught the trailing flight in perfect formation. 3 fighters, perfectly spaced, flying predictable courses. The blast envelope engulfed all 3 simultaneously. Oberfeldwebel Ernst Hoffmann's aircraft simply disintegrated. The wing sections separated from the fuselage in different directions. Feldwebel Georg Schmidt's fighter caught fire, the pilot trapped in his cockpit, as flames consumed the engine compartment. Jeffrader Wilhelm Braun's FW-190 lost its tail assembly, entered an unrecoverable spin. In 15 seconds, Henderson's bombs had eliminated 6 German fighters. The remaining 12 broke formation immediately, not repositioning for another attack. Full retreat. But Henderson wasn't finished. The pursuit Thunderbolt 7 carried no additional ordnance, but Henderson had one advantage left: intelligence. He understood German fighter doctrine. Damaged formations would regroup at designated rally points before attempting secondary attacks. Henderson had studied Luftwaffe tactical manuals captured from shot-down aircraft. He knew where the survivors would go. He directed Garrett to follow the retreating fighters. "Are you insane?" the pilot asked over the intercom. "We're supposed to return to formation." "Trust me," Henderson replied. "I know where they're going." The German fighters regrouped 8 miles northeast, exactly where Henderson predicted. But they weren't alone. 12 fresh FW-190s had joined them. 24 fighters total. Now Henderson faced a problem. He had no bombs left, but he had something potentially more valuable: reputation. The German pilots had watched their comrades get annihilated by American bombs. They knew Thunderbolt 7 was the aircraft responsible. What they didn't know was whether she still carried ordnance. Henderson ordered Garrett to approach the German formation, not to attack, to intimidate. Thunderbolt 7 flew directly toward the German fighters. Bomb bay doors open. No ordnance visible, but German pilots couldn't see inside the bay from their angle. The psychological effect was immediate. The German formation scattered. Fighters that had regrouped for coordinated attack suddenly dispersed in every direction. Not because Henderson could hurt them, because they believed he could. But 3 German pilots didn't break formation, experienced veterans who recognized the bluff. Hauptmann Friedrich Mayer had 53 confirmed kills. He led the remaining fighters in a coordinated attack on Thunderbolt 7. No formation flying, no predictable patterns, pure aggression. Henderson had no bombs. No way to defend against determined fighters, But he had one weapon remaining: mathematics. The solution: Henderson calculated the attack vectors of the 3 remaining fighters. Hauptmann Mayer approaching from 11 o'clock high. Oberleutnant Joseph Brenner from 2 o'clock level. Unteroffizier Heinrich Wolf from 5 o'clock low. Convergence point: Thunderbolt 7's position in 37 seconds. Henderson couldn't fight them with ordnance, but he could fight them with physics. He ordered Garrett to dive. Full power, maximum descent rate. The B-17 wasn't built for fighter maneuvers, but Henderson wasn't trying to outmaneuver the Germans. He was trying to outthink them. The dive changed the geometry of the attack. Fighters that had calculated intercept courses for level flight suddenly found their target descending rapidly. They had to adjust. Mayer pulled his nose down to follow. Brenner rolled inverted and dove. Wolf climbed to maintain his angle. 3 fighters, 3 different attack vectors, converging on the same point. Henderson waited until the last possible moment, then ordered Garrett to level off abruptly. The B-17 pulled out of its dive at exactly the moment when all 3 German fighters were committed to their intercept courses. Mayer, diving steeply, couldn't pull out in time. He flashed beneath Thunderbolt 7, missing by 50 feet. Brenner, inverted and diving, lost sight of his target in the pullout. He rolled level, found himself alone. Wolf, climbing to intercept, suddenly faced a target that was no longer where physics said it should be. But Henderson's real genius was in the timing. He had calculated not just where the German fighters would be, but when they would be most vulnerable. All 3 fighters, having missed their intercepts, were now low on energy, separated from each other, and positioned where Henderson wanted them. In the bomber's defensive gun envelope, the Finnish Thunderbolt 7's gunners had been waiting for this moment. Staff Sergeant Mike O'Brien in the top turret, Sergeant Danny Rodriguez in the ball turret, Sergeant Tommy Chen in the tail position. All 3 opened fire simultaneously. O'Brien's twin .5 caliber machine guns found Mayer's aircraft first. 2, second burst, 50 rounds. The FW-190's canopy shattered. Mayer slumped forward, aircraft entering a shallow dive. Rodriguez tracked Brenner through a climbing turn. Sustained fire. The German fighter's left wing erupted in flames. Brenner bailed out at 22,000 feet. Chen engaged Wolf from the tail position. The German pilot tried to break away, but flew directly into the stream of tracers. Engine fire. Catastrophic failure. Wolf's aircraft disintegrated in midair. 3 more German fighters eliminated. Total count: 18 FW-190s destroyed or damaged in 6 minutes of engagement. But Henderson's innovation went beyond the immediate tactical victory. The doctrine changed. Thunderbolt 7 landed at Polbrook at 15:47 hours, 9 hours after takeoff. Henderson climbed out of the Bombardier compartment. His hands were steady. No shakes, no visible stress. The ground crew swarmed the aircraft, counting damage: 30, 1 bullet holes, 7 cannon strikes. Destroyed oxygen line, cracked plexiglass in the nose compartment. But she flew. She survived. Crew Chief Murphy examined the bomb bay, found it empty. Every pound of ordnance expended. He found Henderson sitting on the tarmac, cleaning his bomb site. Standard maintenance. Nothing special. "You used everything," Murphy said. 5,000 pounds. You fired every bomb we loaded." Henderson replied, "Had to, didn't have enough to waste any." "How many fighters did you get?" Garrett asked. Murphy consulted his notes, counts from other crew members, radio intercepts from German communications, visual confirmations from escort fighters who had finally caught up near the target. 18 confirmed destroyed or damaged, Murphy said, in 6 minutes of engagement. Word of Henderson's tactics reached 8th Air Force headquarters within hours. By evening, Major General James Doolittle personally interviewed Henderson. "Explain your methodology," Doolittle ordered. Henderson outlined his philosophy: offensive bombing using ordnance as anti-aircraft weapons, Psychological warfare through tactical innovation. Traditional Bombardier doctrine treats bombs as ground attack weapons exclusively, Henderson explained. But bombs don't care what they hit. Physics doesn't distinguish between ground targets and aerial targets. A 500-pound bomb creates the same blast pattern whether it detonates against a factory or a fighter formation. The mathematical principles were simple but revolutionary. A standard 500-pound general-purpose bomb contained 291 pounds of amytal explosive. Detonating at altitude, it created a lethal fragment pattern extending 400 yards in every direction. The blast wave itself was lethal to 150 yards for aircraft structures. German fighter formations flew predictable attack patterns at known speeds. Henderson had calculated that FW-190s approaching at 350 miles per hour covered 513 feet per second. A bomb falling from 26,000 feet took approximately 8 seconds to reach 25,000 feet detonation altitude. Simple mathematics. Fighter speed times descent time equals intercept distance. 513 feet per second times 8 seconds equals 4,104 feet. German fighters' beginning attack runs 4,000 yards out would be directly in the blast zone when Henderson's bombs detonated. The Germans teach their pilots to attack predictably, Henderson continued. Formation discipline. Coordinated approaches mathematical precision, but mathematics works both ways. If they're predictable, they're targetable. Doolittle absorbed this information carefully. Henderson had taken basic Bombardier mathematics and weaponized them against aerial targets. Instead of calculating bombing solutions for stationary ground targets, he calculated intercept solutions for moving air targets. The psychological effect is equally important, Henderson added. German pilots have spent 3 years attacking American bombers without effective retaliation. They expect us to drop bombs early and run. When we don't, when we turn our ordnance against them, their entire tactical doctrine collapses. Intelligence reports supported Henderson's analysis. German fighter squadrons that encountered Henderson-type tactics showed measurably reduced combat effectiveness. Pilots became hesitant. Attack formations scattered earlier. Mission abort rates increased significantly. "Can this be taught?" Doolittle asked. "Yes, sir, but it requires bombardiers who think like fighter pilots. Men who see opportunity instead of targets, who understand that survival comes from aggression, not procedure." The traditional Bombardier training program emphasized accuracy, not adaptability. Students learned to hit stationary targets under ideal conditions. They calculated wind drift and altitude correction for ground-based objectives. Henderson's method required different skills: predictive mathematics, target motion analysis, psychological warfare principles. Students needed to understand enemy fighter doctrine as thoroughly as they understood their own bombing procedures. Not everyone has the temperament, Henderson warned. You need men who see patterns before they develop, who calculate solutions while targets are moving, who'd rather attack problems than avoid them. Doolittle made his decision. Find them. I am authorizing a special training program. You'll develop curriculum, select candidates, transform Bombardier tactics across the entire 8th Air Force. Henderson hesitated. "Sir, I prefer to stay with my crew." "Your crew survived because of what you did," Doolittle said bluntly. "Other crews are dying because their bombardiers don't know what you know. Which is more important, 9 men or 9,000? The answer was obvious. The legacy Henderson accepted the training assignment. Over the next 8 months, he developed the curriculum that became known as Henderson's Method. The program was established at Laredo Army Airfield, Texas, where conditions resembled European combat altitudes. The first class consisted of 12 bombardiers selected from operational squadrons, not the most accurate bombardiers, the most adaptable. Men who had shown initiative under pressure, who improvised solutions when standard procedures failed. Lieutenant Colonel Thomas Brennan became Henderson's co-instructor. Brennan had flown 43 missions as a pilot and understood fighter tactics from both perspectives. Together, they developed a revolutionary training protocol. Week 1. German Fighter Doctrine Analysis. Students studied captured Luftwaffe tactical manuals, combat reports, pilot debriefings. They learned to think like enemy fighters, predict attack patterns, identify vulnerable moments in coordinated assaults. Week 2. Advanced Bombardier Mathematics. Not just ballistics calculations, motion prediction algorithms, target intercept geometry. Students learned to calculate where moving targets would be, not just where they were. Week 3. Psychological Warfare Principles. Understanding how tactical innovations create strategic effects, how individual actions influence enemy doctrine, how fear multiplies across entire air forces. Week 4. Live fire exercises against remote, controlled target drones. Students practice timing bomb releases against moving aerial targets. Success rate started at 12%. By week's end, averaged 67%. The program trained 347 bombardiers before the war ended. Each class improved on the last. Refinements in technique. Better target prediction. More precise timing calculations. Aircraft equipped with Henderson trained bombardiers achieved remarkable results. B-17s and B-24s that had previously been passive targets became active hunters. Fighter kill ratios that exceeded dedicated P-51 escort fighters. The 351st Bombardment Group, Henderson's original unit, recorded 127 fighter kills using Bombardier tactics between April and November 1944. No other bombardment group exceeded 40. German responses revealed the psychological impact. Luftwaffe tactical directives issued in July 1944 specifically warned against close formation attacks on American bombers. Enemy bombardiers have developed new tactics, maintain standoff distances, avoid predictable approach patterns. By September 1944, German fighter pilots were avoiding American bomber formations entirely during daylight hours. The Luftwaffe shifted to night operations and hit and run tactics. Close formation attacks became effectively extinct. Henderson flew 17 more combat missions after the 14th of March. He shot down 11 additional German fighters using Bombardier tactics. His total of 18 aerial victories remained the record for non-gunner crew positions throughout the war. Combat reports from Henderson's later missions revealed continuous tactical evolution. May 23rd mission destroyed 3 Messerschmitt Me-262 jets using delayed fuse bombs that detonated during their second attack pass. The 15th of June mission eliminated entire FW-190 squadron by timing releases during their formation assembly phase. Most importantly, Henderson's students surpassed their instructor. Lieutenant Robert Walsh achieved 22 fighter kills. Captain David O'Brien recorded 19. Sergeant Michael Torres 18. The cumulative effect transformed the air war over Europe. American bomber formations that had suffered 40% casualty rates in early 1944 reduced losses to 12% by late 1944. German fighter effectiveness declined proportionally, but the innovation carried risks. Henderson's method required bombardiers to carry ordnance deeper into enemy territory. Aircraft remained heavy and less maneuverable longer. Some crews paid the price for tactical aggression. Lucky Strike, piloted by Captain James Morrison, was shot down over Berlin carrying full bomb loads for Henderson-style intercept attacks. All crew lost. Memphis Belle II crashed during evasive maneuvers while attempting aerial bombing, 7 casualties. Henderson never forgot the costs. After each loss, he refined the training, emphasized judgment over aggression, taught students when to abort intercept attempts. When conventional tactics offered better survival odds, the balance between innovation and survival became Henderson's obsession. Revolutionary tactics had to be survivable tactics. Dead bombardiers couldn't implement new doctrine. By war's end, Henderson's students had destroyed 1247 German aircraft using Bombardier tactics. The technique spread to Pacific theater operations. B-29 Bombardiers used Henderson's methods against Japanese fighters during raids on Japan. Henderson survived the war and remained in the newly formed Air Force until 1963. He retired as a full colonel and became a civilian instructor at the Air Force Academy. His textbook, Offensive Bombardier Tactics, remained classified until 1968, when finally declassified. Henderson's manual became required study at Air Command and Staff College. The mathematical principles influenced development of air-to-air missiles, precision, guided munitions, smart weapon systems. Modern weapons designers still reference Henderson's equations. The fundamental insight remains unchanged. Physics applies universally. Mathematical prediction enables tactical innovation. Aggression properly applied beats passive defense. Henderson died on the 3rd of November, 1998, at age 78. He was buried at Arlington National Cemetery with full military honors. 300 former students attended the funeral. Pilots who had learned Henderson's method, gunners whose lives were saved by bombardiers who fought back. General Curtis LeMay delivered the eulogy. Bill Henderson proved that war is mathematics. Victory goes to whoever calculates better. But calculation without courage is merely arithmetic. Henderson had both. The bombardier position, previously considered defensive support, became one of the most feared specialties in American aviation. Henderson's students went on to develop precision bombing techniques that influenced air warfare through Vietnam, Desert Storm, and beyond. But Henderson's greatest legacy wasn't tactical, it was conceptual. He proved that impossible situations required impossible solutions, that conventional wisdom produced conventional results, that mathematics properly applied could turn defense into offense. The 14th of March, 1944 lasted 6 minutes. The moment when one farm boy from Oklahoma taught the Army Air Force that bombs weren't just for ground targets, that bombardiers weren't just passive observers, that mathematics could be weaponized against mathematics. Every precision, guided weapon traces its conceptual lineage to Henderson's insight. Physics doesn't distinguish between targets. Prediction enables interception. Aggression beats passivity. The revolution began with 5,000 pounds of ordnance and 18 German fighters. It ended with transformed air warfare doctrine and thousands of American lives saved. Henderson's method became Henderson's legacy. Don't just survive the enemy. Make them afraid to fight you. Epilogue: The Mathematics of Courage, the 14th of March, 1944, lasted 6 minutes. The moment when passive bombing became active hunting. When defense became offense. When one Oklahoma farm boy proved that conventional wisdom produces conventional results, and conventional results get you killed. Henderson's innovation wasn't about superior firepower or advanced technology. It was about mathematical thinking applied to impossible situations. About refusing to accept that bombardiers were passive participants in air combat. The technical specifications tell the story in numbers. Standard B, -17 bomb load. 5,000 pounds maximum. Henderson's ordnance. 5,000-pound general-purpose bombs, each containing 2 91 pounds of amytal explosive. Total destructive capability, 1,455 pounds of explosive material. German FW 190 specifications. Length 29 feet, wingspan 34 feet, maximum speed 408 miles per hour. Henderson's mathematical breakthrough. Calculating intercept solutions for moving aerial targets using gravity-delivered ordnance. The mathematics worked because Henderson understood that German fighter pilots flew mathematically predictable patterns. Luftwaffe doctrine emphasized formation discipline, coordinated attacks, precise timing. Predictability meant vulnerability. Henderson weaponized predictability. Intelligence reports captured after the war revealed the German Air Force's response. Oberkommando der Luftwaffe issued Directive 1247B in May 1944. American bombardiers have developed new offensive tactics. All fighter squadrons will avoid close formation attacks against heavy bomber formations. The directive effectively acknowledged German defeat in daylight air combat. Henderson's 6 minutes changed strategic doctrine for both air forces. Henderson's final combat mission occurred on the 23rd of November, 1944. Target synthetic oil refinery at Merseburg. His B-17 encountered 36 German fighters during the bomb run. Using refined tactical methods, Henderson eliminated 9 fighters and damaged 14 more, 0 American casualties. After the war, Henderson spent 18 years developing curriculum that became standard throughout the Air Force. His students taught the next generation. Their students taught the generation after that. Modern precision, guided weapons trace direct lineage to Henderson's insights. The principle of predictive targeting, mathematical intercept calculations. Contemporary air-to-air missiles, smart bombs, laser, guided systems, all evolved from Henderson's basic insight that physics applies universally. But Henderson's greatest contribution wasn't tactical or technological. It was conceptual. He proved that impossible situations require impossible solutions, that mathematical thinking can overcome material disadvantages. Every Air Force Academy cadet studies Henderson's method, not just the technical details, the decision-making process. How one person's willingness to challenge conventional wisdom transformed an entire military service. Henderson died knowing his innovation had saved thousands of American lives. Bombardiers trained in his method achieved survival rates 15% higher than conventionally trained crews. Over 4 years of combat operations, that difference meant 3,000 aircrew members who came home instead of becoming casualties. 3,000 families who received homecoming telegrams instead of death notifications. 3,000 men who lived to see peace because one Oklahoma farm boy refused to accept that bombardiers couldn't fight back. The 14th of March, 1944 lasted 6 minutes. 1 bombardier, 18 enemy fighters. 5,000 pounds of ordnance. The moment when American air power discovered that offense beats defense, innovation beats tradition, and courage combined with mathematics beats superior numbers. Henderson's legacy lives in every precision weapon, every calculated risk, every moment when someone chooses action over passivity. The farm boy who learned to make impossible mathematics work became the man who taught the Air Force to fight back with everything they had. That is the enduring lesson of Henderson's method. Don't just survive the enemy. Make them afraid to fight you. The revolution began in 6 minutes over Germany. It continues every time someone refuses to accept that problems can't be solved, odds can't be overcome, or mathematics can't be weaponized against mathematics. Henderson proved that courage is calculation, that survival is mathematics, that impossible odds mean nothing when someone calculates a solution nobody else considered. 6 minutes, 18 fighters. 1 bombardier who changed warfare forever.